morning, church family. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to be doing something a little bit differently for the next 2 weeks. Recently, the youth group and some of the adults from Mount Hope were on a missions trip, a wonderful trip to Parkersburg, West Virginia, and we're going to be sharing some of our experiences there over the course of these next 2 Sundays. So it'll be a little bit different. You're not going to have a traditional sermon, but what you will have are a glimpse of some of the things that we did. There'll be some music and some videos where people who were partaking in that have shared about their experiences. It was an incredible time, so I know that even though it's a little bit different, we just ask that you take the time to watch these. I think you'll see sort of the impact that the trip had not only on the community but on those of us that went as well. It was an incredible opportunity to see the Lord working and see how people are growing and how God is able to use us. I feel like it was definitely a changing point in my life in terms of how I see myself as an instrument for God. I would encourage everyone who has the opportunity to go on a missions trip to do so. So a couple of things real quick before we get into that. I just want to give you a little bit of background on Parkersburg, West Virginia, in case you're not familiar. I know a couple people are. But Parkersburg, West Virginia is a small city. It's interesting. Visually, it looks much larger than a town like Leesburg because it's sort of an industrial city. But population-wise, I think it's less than half of what Leesburg is, or about half of what Leesburg is. Much of the population has moved out, much is aging, and a very large amount is addicted to opioids. The industries have left, and so there's high unemployment, there's high poverty rates, and drugs and alcohol abuse run fairly rampant there. So it's a city in distress. It's one of the highest need cities that the Praying Pelicans Mission services. All of the trips to Parkersburg were canceled except ours, and so it was a real opportunity to encourage and work with some of these churches, and the churches we worked with were Downtown Bethel and Liberty Street Church. Churches who are in the trenches, working daily in a really difficult circumstances, and so they were overjoyed and encouraged to have us walk beside them just for those few days. I can't say enough about how inspiring those people were. So we worked with 2 churches, like I said, Downtown Bethel, which obviously is downtown, and Pastor Janet, and their church has really focused on the addicted population, the homeless population. They are in the middle of everything. One of the projects we did was going through the worst neighborhoods in Parkersburg, door to door, offering prayer, offering information on the services that are provided for treatment for drug abuse and those types of things, as well as information on the church itself, where they can learn more about Jesus, and really, most importantly, trying to make a personal connection with people. Let them know that God loves them, that we love them, that they matter. And it was an incredible experience, one that I never would have chosen, but one that I am so grateful to have had and would never take back. So you're going to get an opportunity to hear about that and the work that Downtown Bethel's doing. We also worked with Liberty Street Church, and they are a church that is transitioning. Their pastor has left. They're hoping to be calling a new pastor who's visiting, visited last week, that they're really excited about. They've had some good connection with him, so we can be in prayer for them. But we worked in connection with Pastor Eric, who's the youth pastor there, and he really works with the town of Parkersburg, or the city of Parkersburg, on trying to grab the youth and get them involved and in the churches, and going to the programs before they get into drugs and before they drop out of school and those types of things. So these two churches sort of bookend the most vulnerable populations in Parkersburg, and they were incredible people. We are so inspired by them. We would love it if you remember to be in prayer for them. Throughout the city, many of the churches were shuttered. In fact, I don't know as I've seen a city with so many churches in it, but many of them are closed down. The ones that are open, most of those are losing folks, and so they could really use your prayer. And God is working through these two churches clearly from the stories and from the interactions that we had. But they need encouragement, and they need Christians to be standing beside them through this journey. So I pray that you'll bear with us. We have different sound quality based on the videos. None of it was shot on equipment that is professional or anything like that. A lot of it's from phones and various things. But you're going to get a good sort of glimpse at many of the things we did. We did not take cameras with us into the neighborhoods. We didn't feel, nor did the missions. None of us felt like that was appropriate, but you'll get some testimony about those experiences throughout these. So may God bless you over these next 2 weeks, and we pray that you will be able to see how God was working through this missions trip.
But this week, I've just felt like such a strong connection with him. Like in all the worship services that we did, and I think I've cried in more of these worship services here than I ever have, like in my life. It was just so amazing to feel so close to him, and I'm really hoping that's going to kind of continue, even when we go back to Virginia and stuff. In terms of the group, I feel like since usually when we're together, we're all kind of like laughing, joking around and stuff, it's like easy to forget that we all have like deep things to say and thoughts and stuff. And I think it was really cool to see that this week, and see everybody's faith and stuff. That was really nice. And then in terms of the community, it was really great to see how generous everybody was, like with the food drive, and people who didn't have much came out with bags of food for us to give to other people, even though they could easily be somebody who's like on that food pantry list. And then also just like the willingness of people to look for God, I think, because of just where we live and how privileged it is. It's a lot easier for us to think, oh, we have everything, but being here is really it's been really cool just to see that.
For the group, I really felt God the most at the night that Pastor Eric was here, and we were all on the stage and we were sharing kind of like things that we found throughout the week. And I got to see a side of us, because like you said, we usually are like really goofy, laughing, and not really taking anything super seriously. But on the stage in front of all those people, we had like kind of a vulnerable moment, and I really felt God in that room. In general, so that was my moment for the group. And for myself, it was that same night while Pastor Eric was preaching, there was just so much of Jesus in the room that I felt. And it wasn't like he was preaching a really great sermon, but inside I was having like this really intense moment where I was like coming to realization with a lot of things of my spiritual relationship with God. And so that was really amazing for me. And for the community, I saw God in the people who opened doors and who were willing to talk and open up and show like that even though a lot of the solicitors that are religious like are kind of like pushing stuff when they realized that we weren't, and they were so open to sharing pieces of their life with us, which is really amazing.
For myself, I think if I narrow it down to one thing, because I can't really tell you everything that's going on in my own mind, it would be two things. It's not one, but two things. A renewed sense of energy and imagination. At Mount Hope, we've been, over the last couple of years, working out a vision statement and working on putting hands and feet to the vision statement. That is learning to love God, learning to love each other, and learning to live lives of service. And we just started putting that into effect and putting that into practice when the COVID came along, and then all of a sudden, it's like the wind being taken out of your sails. You have purpose and you have direction and you're going forward and there's momentum, and then all of a sudden all of that stops. And so I think all of us have been struggling over the last 3 or 4 or 5 months with this. What are we doing? How are we doing it? How can we do it effectively? Is it really impacting people? Are they committed to Christ as they were before? Are they kind of drifting? All those kind of questions. And then coming here, you see again the people here, that Christ is working in them, and that there's energy and there's purpose and meaning and there's strive. So as far as everybody here is concerned, I can see the growth. Everybody's been remarking on it. And I think that, for example, when we think of our kids going off to college, they're going to be gone from us. They're going to be a new era of freedom. And if they have character weaknesses that are large character weaknesses, there's so many temptations. And the temptations are so powerful that I know as parents, as grandparents, we worry about what are they going to decide to do when there's a temptation. But this week has given me encouragement to think that amongst the folks here, that there is a resiliency and a spiritual maturity that will resist temptation. Now, of course, we all fall into sin at times, and I don't expect that any of us will be perfect, but I expect that we'll turn our faces back to Christ and get back on the right path if we should make a slip. Now, I say something about Lorelei because she had the trial of going around with me this week. Up to many houses. Now, Lorelei's public persona is that she's a woman of very few words. And so this was interesting because even though I did more talking than she did, she also did talking. And so I got to see her greet people and talk to people and really respond in a very intelligent and sensitive way to the comments that people were making. And then when she prayed for them, it was really great to see how she used those things in her prayer. So it was a great way to learn more about Lorelei. And she put up with me most of the entire week, and we thought that was great too. And then in terms of the community, one of the things I noticed is I think we all saw this. People would come to the door and they had this expression on their face, and it is, what does this person want? A question, or sometimes there was fear, sometimes there was skepticism, and there were all these different kinds of expressions when they came to the door. And then as you began to talk and you began to share in a way that was non-threatening, you could see different people reacting differently, but there was kind of like a thaw going on. And I noticed that especially when it came to that question, which we mentioned, asking if there's something we could pray for, that people were really like, oh, they're going to pray for me. It's not, okay, can I sell you something, or can you give me money for such and such? It was, can we pray for you? So I like that thing where you could see a person going from skepticism or fear or whatever expression they had to a place where they were open to what you were saying, because they were open to the fact that you were going to pray for them and you weren't asking for something from them. So that's what I saw in the community, and I thought that was really inspiring.
It's my, I guess you can call it faith in humanity, because I've witnessed it so many times, especially going to this poor community. Like you said, they don't really have much, and they're willing to give, because we've experienced it in our community where somebody has a lot and they're stingy and they don't want to really give much. And it reminds me of what Paul said, that God's power is always made perfect in weakness. We don't really need to have something extravagant or huge in order to make an impact. It's these small things that God uses and make it big, so that He gets the honor and glory which truly it belongs to Him. Because if we are so wealthy and we're giving all the time, we start to think, wait, I'm doing all these great things, and that's wrong, right? Because everything that we're doing here is to honor and glorify God, because all of this belongs to Him. Mm-hmm. And then for the group, I've never played drums, and that was the first time we played drums in front of a crowd, and it was great.
And you did really well.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I thought it was great.
Yeah. And then for the community, it's the same thing what Edwin said. With the food drive, it was very inspirational to see all these, again, the poor community, and they're actually helping each other out. When you've passed them the flyer, you don't think that they're going to do anything, because they take it and then they walk. And we've seen it in our community where they would grab something and you have no expectations of them bringing anything back. But they walk out and then they give you a bag, give you 2 bags. And that was great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, in terms of what I saw in the community, it was, as Mr. Allen Edwin said, the food drive. It reminded me, or kind of, now that I think about it, it reminds me of the story of the woman and the 2 copper coins.
Mm-hmm.
Should I explain?
Sure, yeah, say what you're thinking.
I don't, how those who have the least to give can give the most, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
The idea is correct.
And then for myself, I think I've kind of found my calling, so to speak. I think God's hinting at me for what I should do. I guess, I don't know.
Yeah. What is it?
Can you share that?
I shared it last night.
Yeah, but you
Right.
were sharing again.
Oh, that's. I mean, seeing all these rundown houses, and I'm thinking, I think God's just telling me to learn a trade and, use those skills to help fix fix houses, fix things.
That's fantastic.
That's
And
awesome.
in terms of the group, I mean, in the way all of you, we're so willing to pound the pavement, so to speak.
The impact in seeing God and myself, I think it was more just how I learned, I grew through it. I talked about last night having how our faith has to have an impact, and at least for me, that really, this week, coming here, doing what we've done, when you ask, like, where have I seen God, and I feel like I've seen it everywhere. but just having our faith actually making an impact and really putting our actions into words. For us going out into community, this passage really came alive. Everyone knows it, the parable of the sower. But I just wanted to read this one paragraph from it. It's very short. While a large crowd was gathering, people were coming to Jesus from town after town. He told this parable. A farmer went to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path. It was trampled off, and the birds ate it up. Some of the houses, they may be like being renovated or not even being used, being squatted in, someone who doesn't even care about Jesus. But, I mean, if they're squatting in a house, I really doubt they're going to take the time to throw it away. So it could still find its way into someone else's hands, and it can still be of use. Some fell on the rocky ground, and when it came up, the plants withered because they had no moisture. The sad thing about clearly the ministry, not clearly the ministry, but clearly in life in general, with sin and its hold on man and just in general, it's not every seed and everything is always gonna be fruitful, and not everything we do is always gonna be fruitful. And I feel like that was really discouraging at certain points, but knowing that we're all doing it in God's will was just really reassuring. And other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Honestly, I feel like that just goes along with what I was just saying. But other seed fell on good soil, and I guess that part just really encourages me in the end of it. Because no matter, there was so many more parts where the seed didn't do what it was supposed to do. And we don't have to be the thought of that, the possibility of that with all the work that we did doesn't have to really discourage us, because at the end of the day, some seed falls on good soil, and that's really what's important. And the last verse, it came up and yielded a crop 100 times more than what was sown. Shows that our efforts, even if they don't reach half as many people as we ever dreamed they would reach, it's gonna yield 100 times more than was ever sown. Just the work we're doing here. In terms of the group, I saw people grow. I saw Natalie open up, which was really moving to me. I just saw people tapping into this current of Christ and faith and just going on what their hearts were led to do. And I think we don't always do that day to day. I think we live in a world where we're trying to keep going, keep moving with the flow of things. We have our schedules, we have this. We don't really have time to be vulnerable and just take a moment and listen to what we feel like we need to say in that moment, and if we can make a difference, and just opening up our hearts to what God has to say. I heard from Elijah, and I was really inspired by what he said and what he's finding and through this mission. And Anduin, praying with her day to day, really growing in our own prayers and seeing how we were just circling in this prayer of all reaching the same points, but we were saying it in different words, and it just covered just such a huge spiritual amount of encouragement and just hope, and just everybody opening up throughout the mission has just been really inspiring. And I feel like I've gotten to know a whole other side of the group. Usually we're silly, like Anduin said, we don't take everything seriously all the time, but we definitely are in touch with the Spirit, and we all are growing in our own ways, and it's really evident. In the community, I saw years of the Spirit working in Parkersburg, just downtown Bethel. Pastor Janet's stories of her work with addiction.